Welcome to When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. Coming up in this episode.
It was a make or break situation really. I set myself a year of doing freelance work to see if I could make it work. And if it didn't, then it would be a case of dusting off the CV and getting it out there.
If you're good at what you're doing, you'll get the business, and that's when you start and deliver, you get your reputation and so on, and on the back of that, you can then start to modify your pricing.
Thank you for watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, the show that provides you with positive stories and lessons to help you find the silver lining if you're struggling with the uncertainty and challenges of redundancy. I'm your host, Liu Batchelor, and I'm a presenter, content producer, and TEDx curator. And I'm on a mission to help people share their passion and purpose. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Heads Up HR. This episode's story comes from web agency owner James Sarjeant, who always wanted to go freelance, but on being made redundant, worried if he'd have the business skills to be able to handle the new role. Coming up later in the show, we'll hear from HR expert Nick Hawley, who'll be sharing with us his insight into the tricky subject of how to objectively establish your value and set your price. But first, let's hear James's story, read by voiceover artist Jordan Honzik.
Before I was made redundant, I was working for a company over in Canterbury developing websites. When redundancy was mentioned, I started making plans to go freelance as I'd always wanted to, but this was the push that made me take the leap, albeit a little earlier in life than planned. That change brought a whole new set of challenges with it. I'd never had to go out and find work before. Management had always just assigned projects. I'd also never had to deal with running a business before either. Accounts, sales, it was all new territory. The learning stage was a challenge, but one that I had to overcome if it was going to work. A few friends and contacts helped with the initial projects, and then the learning began. It was a make or break situation really. I set myself a year of doing freelance work to see if I could make it work. And if it didn't, then it would be a case of dusting off the CV and getting it out there. The whole process was rather quick and was, at the time, very stressful. But I was in a frame of mind that allowed me just to soak it up and allow it to happen without it really getting me down. I hadn't long purchased the house and I was a little worried about being able to pay the mortgage and bills, but I had a good amount of savings in the bank, which allowed me to live without being too worried. Before running my own business, I was just given a project and didn't always have much control over how projects were completed. Since being able to take a project from start to finish, I have found much more association with each project. Being able to really connect with the client from the very beginning helps get the very best for each client, and that has reignited my passion for development. Knowing you are making a real difference to someone's business, helping them achieve their goals is a great feeling, and that can't really be beaten. The experience of being made redundant made me realise that no matter what life throws at me, good things can happen as a result. It tested my mindset and positivity having a challenge like that thrown at me, but now life is good. It is a challenge, but one to be embraced. Whilst redundancy may seem like the end of the world at the time, it doesn't have to be. If you are looking to move to working for yourself, then to start with, use existing skills and see how you can leverage those to start a business. You may need to partner with someone with complementary skills, so networking is also key. Contact existing friends and family to see if anyone they might know need the skills that you can offer. If you're unsure how to charge for your new business, err on the side of caution, but don't be afraid to change your pricing. The worst thing you can do is undercharge consistently, as this devalues your business. But do some research into what others are charging for similar services. The new business is not so new now. We are into our fourth year and busier than ever. The COVID-19 lockdown saw a massive rise in inquiries and work, but we're looking to continue that growth beyond the pandemic. With that, we're looking to break out the typical 9-to-5 workday and enjoy life whilst getting work done. It's all about finding the balance. Work to live, not live to work.
What I love about what James shared was how he talked about being able to form closer relationships with his clients, showing that it's not just what you do, but how you do it, and great relationships do great in business. I think that James's point about pricing is really interesting. His approach of starting low while he was gaining his confidence and building his portfolio is a really great way to start. But then, as he hit key milestones, it was a great opportunity for him to refresh and review his progress. Next up, we'll hear from HR expert Nick Hawley from Heads Up HR. to see what he thinks of James's story and what advice he'd give people in similar situations. Nick, thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and it's good to be with you.
So in James's story, we heard about how this really was the opportunity, it was the push that he needed to make that scary jump, that leap, to become freelance, to start his own business. But ultimately, as he mentioned kind of throughout his story, there's lots that you've got to consider, right, when you start a business, and we're not always kind of taught all the skills at school, and we maybe don't necessarily kind of get an opportunity to learn those skills in a specific role in employment. So what would your advice be to someone going, yep, I'm going to do it, but where do I start?
Well, I think for me, first and foremost is mindset and the desire to jump into a completely different world of work. If you've had the catalyst of redundancy that's pushed you in that direction, that's great, because sometimes that's what people need. But I think the key thing for me is ensuring that the plan that you put in place, if you're thinking about going into self-employment, is well thought through and not just a haphazard kind of range of different activities that just kind of crop up from day to day. Getting a real plan in place, thinking about a business plan, your marketing plan, what your product is, what your pricing is, what your banking arrangements are, whether you're going to be trading as an independent trader, freelance, or a limited company. There's a whole raft of things, and my advice would be to get in touch with the local Chamber of Commerce, who have got amazing programs to help start-up businesses in particular. And I think the other thing that strikes me is many people kind of move into the world of self-employment because they have a hobby. The hobby is great because that's what they're enjoying, but trying to make a business out of a hobby is a whole different game. So you do need that planning, you do need that research, you do need to understand what's happening out in the marketplace with competitors and so on, and what will make you different. Otherwise, it's an expensive hobby to be doing. So look up as many sources of information as you can.
Brilliant. Yeah, so do that research and kind of use that opportunity to build. Good stuff. And I guess one of the big scary things that a lot of people I'm sure struggle with when it comes to going freelance, starting their own business, is pricing. You suddenly have to put a price on, an hour, a day, a specific output that you produce. What would your advice be to people where do you even start? I know you mentioned about research, and so there's an element of research for that, but I guess there's also the emotional side, isn't it, of people being able to objectively value their time and their skills. So yeah, what would your advice be to freelancers? But I guess equally it relates, doesn't it, to if you're negotiating a salary as well.
I think first and foremost, you've got to understand what skills you bring into the game, and particularly if you're setting yourself up in the world of self-employment, what your competitors are doing. The last thing you need to be doing is overpricing or indeed underpricing yourself, because you become a busy fool, spending a lot of time not getting a lot of reward for doing that. So in my own case, I benchmark what's happening out in the market to see what other people are doing, what typical charges there are, and actually entertain a discussion and a debate, with a potential client in terms of what budget they may have available to themselves and how you may be able to structure some work that kind of values what it is you're doing. I think the other advice that I took when I moved into the world of self-employment is, you're at the start of a journey. You're developing your expertise. You've not necessarily hit the ground running just yet. So don't go in with ridiculously high prices that maybe after 4 or 5 years trading you could get. Be modest, be sensible. If you're good at what you're doing, you'll get the business, and that's when you start and deliver, you get your reputation and so on, and on the back of that, you can then start to modify your pricing.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was something I really took from James's story. It was this idea of setting it something, but almost setting him deadlines where he'd review his pricing to then put it up, rather than getting stuck at that entry level price for the whole time.
I'd call it dynamic pricing. You've got to be out there, really close to what's going on.
So I know you've gone from that journey from being employed to then working for yourself. So was there anything else that particularly struck you about James's story that you think you can kind of bring to life?
I think in James's case, it's the fact that, although he ultimately had the push, he made the best out of the situation that he faced. He was determined to make it happen. Clearly, he'd got a bit of a financial cushion in order to cushion those early days. The big advice, of course, when you're moving into the world of self-employment is don't expect to be earning shed loads of money from day one. Having a plan in place. And I know in the case of James that he said if it wasn't going to work after 12 months, then he'd have to rethink what he was going to do. So it's being realistic about how far you take your journey and being prepared, if necessary, to then step back into something else.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess that's it, right? There's no kind of shame in trying something out. Either it's not right for you or it doesn't work at this moment in time, but it doesn't mean you can't go back into employment and then try again at a later date where it's maybe better for you.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
Brilliant. Nick, thank you very much. That was Nick Hawley from Heads Up HR. For more tips, advice and support, including information about his redundancy support programme, check out headsuphr.co.uk. Thanks for watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. I hope you managed to find some hope and inspiration from this episode. I'll see you next time.